Cool, so this session is tracking engagement with ArcGIS Open Data, and we'll talk about Google Analytics as well as the tool that we use to track the engagement. My name is Markham Shofner, this is Daniel Fenton, and we're both working for Esri out of the Washington, D.C. Research and Development Center. So before we talk about tracking engagement, first I'd like to talk about telemetry. And telemetry is a fairly old concept, but I guess the textbook definition is the process of recording and transmitting the readings of an instrument. So an automated communications process by which measurements and other data are collected at remote or inaccessible points and transmitted to receiving equipment for monitoring. In layman's terms, gathering information about something that is not where you are. So an example of this could be a weather balloon that you put up into the atmosphere to measure temperatures, humidity, wind, some sensor on the ocean floor to figure out salinity levels, tagging wild animals, relaying information from a remote place to a central location. And how does that apply to the web, or at least the web in 2017? It may not be quite as epic to plug in just a tracking device to your website, but the same idea is rooted in there because you're able to gather this information and make decisions based on what's occurring in all these remote locations. So the users of your website are providing you information about how to improve that website simply by using it. So here comes Google Analytics. This is a freemium software that Google has been offering for a little over 10 years. It's the most used analytics service on the net. And the way that it works is you grab a snippet of code and send information based on this JavaScript back to the Google Analytics database, which will collect information and present it to you in a series of dashboards and however you would like to look at it. So information such as how many people used your site that day or that week, or trends across months, what location they're viewing it from or what language they're viewing it in, which buttons they're clicking, and which pages they spend the most time on, or which pages make them leave your site. What are your bounce rates, all that type of thing. So instead of guessing or developing in the dark, you're able to gain true insight as to the way that this tool that you've built is being used. So the cycle that people tend to use, and then what we use with Google Analytics, is to measure what's occurring, gather that data, learn from it, analyze it, and then take action based on your findings, and then measure again. So here's a list of resources. This deck will be available later, but these are helpful for getting started, standing up a Google Analytics account, help forums if you have specific questions. It's likely somebody else has had that as well, and there are some YouTube videos that will at least give you a baseline understanding of the tool and how it can be useful. So let's get out of PowerPoint and into some tracking. This is Google Analytics, and this is from an account I set up a few days ago. I think you can have something like 100 separate accounts. Each can have 50 websites that they're tracking, or at least that's the free version. So if I go to admin, you'll have these playground accounts that are larger umbrellas of sites that you want to measure. So ArcGIS Open Data is the product that Daniel and I both work on. And this playground here that I'm currently hovering over has all the sites on our QA, dev, production environment, that type of thing that we use to improve that tool. But this playground is something I just recently set up that has a series of tracking demos that can connect to an open data site and give me information based on that. So it looks like I've got 7 out of 50. These keys obviously have a pattern to them. So if I want to create a new property, which is basically creating a website I would like to track, I need to give it a little bit of information before it gives me a key. So let's call it, tracking demo. And what is my URL? So this is where Open Data comes in. Open Data is an application that's built on top of ArcGIS Online. And it's a place where citizens, governments, and communities can come together to share data, upload data sets, download data sets, look at charts, and create websites. So here's an example site that I just pulled up. It's Baltimore School District. And people who are interested in Baltimore schools can come here and look at statistics, charts, and data sets that are based on Baltimore. So let's go to Open Data and create a site. And this is the process of plugging a Google Analytics key into an Open Data site. So let's call this site just tracking demo. Looks like I've had a few. 3! Exclamation point. And I need to set up a URL so that Google can accept this URL, and I'll plug a key into it. Demo, yay. So if I grab this URL, go back to Google Analytics, it looks like Google Analytics needs just 2 pieces of information in order to give me a tracking ID. And again, this ID is something that we will provide to an open data site that will then relay events, page views, any series of information that we have customized it to do back to Google Analytics, and then we can see what's occurring. So we'll create that site. While it's cooking, I'm going to pull up, okay, here we got Firefox. So I'm doing this in Chrome. I want to hit this website from Firefox as if it's a different user, so that Google Analytics can then receive that information. So if I set the site to public, and then choose to preview my site, here's the URL of our tracking demo yay site. Here's the out-of-the-box open data site that can then further be customized, different pictures, categories, data, search, that type of thing. Navigate to Firefox and go to this website. Let it load. Then I go back into Google Analytics. So on the left, you get a series of basically dashboards or UI mechanisms that will help you gain more information about what you're deciding to track. But if I go into this real-time overview, yeah. Sorry, what? I don't see that out there. Yes. And then you can see, so about 32 seconds ago and moving farther into the past, there was that one hit on the site. So there's now an active link between an open data site that I made in a few minutes and a Google Analytics tracking code that I made in 30 seconds that will be able to relay me a lot of information about that site in the future. And I'll let Daniel dive a little bit deeper into how we make decisions or information that we can gain based on that link. Yep.
Thank you. So yeah, Markham was just showing you the real-time view, and that's where I'm going to start as well. Real-time shows you everything that's going on at your site with a very short delay. It's kind of limited in what you can see, but one of the interesting things you can see is events. So there's kind of a general distinction in Google Analytics between page views, which are, anytime someone transitions to a new page, the URL changes basically, and events, which are interactions in your application. So we've gone in and we've tracked the set of events that we think are the most valuable in terms of engagement on your site. And we took this approach from the perspective of someone who is actually trying to make sense of all this data. As a developer, you can do a lot of things with timing and all of this, but it was important for us to recognize that the audience for this data is actually usually our product team. So we've organized things according to kind of the group of really high engagement actions that people are using. So as I go in, you're going to start to see that I do a search. So if I search for something like water, with a little bit of a delay, that event is going to come up here. And that's going to be called a category search, a hero query. And hero is just that big search box on the home page. I go to a data set. That's going to be a page view. If I click on one of these cards and style the map, this is going to be a category data event. And it's going to actually be tagged back to this field. And I'll dive a little bit more into events later, but we actually are able to track, hey, people are interacting with the adder ln2 field a lot. Maybe I should add a better alias to that field. Please take care of your metadata in open data and don't ignore it. But we can see that people are clicking on this. So you see that data event show attribute chart. If someone goes into the API Explorer and tries a query, which to us is a really high value thing that someone would do on your open data site, is actually learn the API for this data set. So every open data set uses the GeoServices or the feature service API. And that's really, it's not just the GeoService API, that's like the API to your water data or the API to your crime data. It's very important for developers. So we want to track if people are actually interacting with that API is a really high value thing that'll happen. Same goes if someone actually goes and clicks and grabs that API. We'll actually grab the event that they copied it, and you'll see, so API category geoservice, really high value event. Same goes if they're filtering through data. We'll track that, we'll label it with the field name that's happening. So we always know the data set, field names, these things are happening. So you can go back and look in depth and see. People are interacting with the description field a lot on the water data set. Maybe we should spend some time working on that, or you know, we know that people are finding this information valuable, so you can take action based off that. So all these kind of high value events like favoriting, signing in, creating web maps and story maps are tracked through their categories and their event actions. So the category for creating a web map is our content creation, another really high value one. You want someone to come to your open data site and actually do something with that data, you know, tell their story or do analysis to find out whether they're going to, you know, launch the expansion of their business. So you can view all this in real time, and you can analyze it in the behavior section, which I'll dive into in time. So now I'm going to full screen this, and we'll talk about the audience overview. So this is where you kind of see generally how people are using, or how much people are using the site. The audience overview works with the concept of sessions. So a session is different from a page view. It's a bit more restrictive. It encompasses page views, but a session is basically any time the same client ID, which is basically assigned when you visit on a browser, anytime that client ID interacts with the site within a 30-minute period would be considered one session. So it's like one time your site was used. You can think of it as that abstraction. So if I work on the site and I come back 20 minutes later and play on it again, that's still the same session. If I come back 2 hours later, that's considered another session. That's what this is measuring. Important to note that all of the queries in this are going to be date scoped. So you can control that here. I like looking at the last 30 days. When people want to know, what browsers are most used, which is something you can find out in this audience overview, I like to look at the last 30 days to tell our developers, don't worry about IE6 because it's like 0.5%. You see me clicking through. IE6 didn't even show up, but we did have 8 people on this site for IE7. We could probably cut them off. So you can see how we, Markham was talking about track, learn, and act. So real live example is that we tracked this and found that IE7 usage really dropped off. We were okay to kind of sunset that and say, it'll degrade gracefully, but we're not going to break our backs trying to make the CSS work or implement features that IE just doesn't support very well. One thing I really like in the audience section is the user explorer. So this is cool because this lets you actually follow an anonymized user through their multiple sessions and see how they're using the site. So this user is someone that has come to the site 27 times in the last 30 days to do things. So looks like they are coming in and viewing this DCGIS crime incidents data set pretty frequently. So they've come in and they've searched for it, so it goes from the bottom up. They landed on this site, you can see where they landed, but they searched for, looking at other data. And you can kind of understand how users are using the site by watching those events go through. And that's another reason why when we implemented this tracking, we wanted to keep our events pretty narrow and things that actually made sense to our product team. Not just developers thinking like, mouse over this thing. That has value in a certain context, but I think there's more value in understanding how people are actually interacting and engaging with the site. So that user explorer to me is really cool. You can also look at user flow. Just show how people are entering the site, where they're dropping off. So you can see, we have a lot of drop-offs after the start page, but once people actually get to a search, the drop-offs drop dramatically. Actually, most people are not leaving after search. So that's a good sign for us. It means people on this site are finding what they're looking for. If you have a lot of drop-offs relative to the number of sessions on your /datasets endpoint, that is a marker to you that people are not finding what they're looking for. And I'll show you how we can dive a little bit more into the specific searches as we get down into the behavior section. All right, so acquisition. How are people getting to my site? We have these big chunks, categories like direct, which is when they've actually entered the URL. They may have found it first through a search or referral. Organic search is if they've used Google Search or Bing or Ask Jeeves, AltaVista, any one of those. And referrals, if coming in from links on other sites. So this being Esri's open data site, we get most of our referrals from Esri.com. Go figure. This is interesting to see. Where is the traffic coming in from? So we're actually got in the last month 64 referrals from Wikipedia. And actually, this is still a mystery to me because usually they have more of a page path. I actually like to find out how traffic came into ArcGIS Open Data from Wikipedia. You really see how others around the web are using your data when you see the referrals. They've embedded, which are also things that you can see through this acquisition. So we can look at social and see how URLs are being shared around the web. We can see that there are 79 tweets. The Twitter one, it's a little tough. You can only see what was shared, not the tweet that it was shared. Some of these are a little better. Like Reddit, you can actually see. I believe you can see the Reddit. Maybe not. Sorry. We can look at landing pages and see how people arrived on the site. So a mix of the home page, the about page for us, individual data sets, or how people are getting here. And there's also an exit pages as well. All right. So I'm going to dive into the behavior section now. And I think that this is probably the most important section of this whole Google Analytics experience. What are people doing on the site? How are they using it? Behavior. So the overview here will just tell you, what are the top hit pages on this site. On your open data site, this is probably going to include a lot more data sets. There's 60,000 data sets on the ArcGIS Open Data umbrella site, so it's going to get washed out. But on yours, you're probably going to see the individual data sets. And if you've upgraded to our newer sites, you'll get all these events that I showed you, as well as your URLs will look like this. So you can actually see, and you won't have the DCGIS, you'll just have Vision Zero Safety Transportation. So you actually look at that. That was a recent upgrade. If you've been using our analytics for a while on the older sites, you'll see just a big, ID, unreadable hash. Now you'll actually see the actual name of the data set in there. The biggest part of this for me is events. So I can actually go through and look at downloads. So this is something we get asked a lot. How can I track downloads on ArcGIS Open Data Site? Go into top events, select download, and look at label. And this is another kind of improvement from the older versions of our sites to the newer versions. And if you have an older one, you'll see a deprecation warning built by Markham. Wonderful feature. That will show you to upgrade. And all of your URLs will be human readable, and all of your data sets will actually be labeled for downloads. It won't just be the ID. You actually see, well, the Vision Zero transportation data set was downloaded 1,000 times last month. You can actually get a little bit more into this with advanced views, which are in our help documentation to look at what are the different types of downloads. And actually, if I drill in here, we'll probably get it. Yeah. So if I drill into any one of those specifically, we'll see that zip files, aka shape files, are the highest, followed by CSV and KML. So people are downloading a lot of shape files. I've got a lot of users pulling shape files. I guess they're important. But also in the top events, we can look at things like data interactions. So people are clicking on features on the map, for example, on that Vision Zero data set. I guess it's a valuable one. And actually, we have some custom dimensions in here that you can get in if you create advanced views that show actually what feature they click on. We're always tracking the feature as well, and I think I can pull that up. Maybe not. Can't pull it up in this view, but we are tracking what individual field was done. So we look at our different ArcGIS views, our ArcGIS events, and we can look at sign-in and how often people went to GeoNet and when did they click on the item page. So all this really valuable interaction information is tracked in events. So really useful thing to look at, just if you need to answer that question about how many times was it downloaded or which data set had the most story maps made on it. What are people really engaging in? Because I don't think we're really interested anymore in the, build it and, we'll see what people do with it. We want to actually see people taking data sets that are published, making web maps, making story maps, building applications. That's why we think it's so high value to track when people are trying out the API, right? They can build an application based off of data that's on your servers and you're maintaining as part of your, just your job and your role as a city. It's huge value for you. You want to know that that's happening. You want to be able to sell that story, to your mayor and say that, look, people are using our API. And this is really valuable. This is why we should invest in this. This is why we need to keep the data up to date or send out teams to collect it and improve it. Because people are using the APIs and building things. So this helps you kind of tell your story about people are using the site, they're coming to it, and they're actually doing things with it. Now I want to point out the site search section, and the most important part of that is search terms. So you can actually see what people are searching for on your site and see things like search exits. So there were 86 searches for the main geo library. Look at this line down here. Search exits were 40%. That could be a hole in the data. If you have a lot of search exits, it means that people are leaving once they search. So they search for main geo library, they close the browser window. They didn't just refine. So they were so discouraged by that initial search, only 7% refined, and 40% of them just left. Right? That identifies a gap right there. That track, learn, act. Like maybe I have a main geo library data set and the metadata isn't good enough. It's, I called it main library geo. We would actually get that, but you know what I mean? Like the metadata was off, or I just don't have that data set at all and I need to collect it. You can see what people are looking for here and take actions. We looked at this to build our search feature on the umbrella page and figured out that we needed to add this location component. Because when we looked at this data, we saw that like 40% of queries actually had a location baked in. Because this site covers a lot of geographies. So we saw that they were saying like Atlanta parcels or Washington crime. So we saw that, we built this in, and we immediately saw utilization going up of this search, and we saw the queries changing, so they didn't include that location component anymore. So when you look at these, although this had City of Washington, D.C., you look at some of these, they're actually really scoped to what they're looking for. They're looking for population data, they're looking for parcels. And population, the search exits are really low. They're finding what they're looking for. There's a lot of other really great stuff in Google Analytics. I would refer you back to Markham's list of resources, YouTube videos and things like that. We also have documentation, turn that off. We have documentation for how to track these different things like downloads and things like that on our help docs for ArcGIS Open Data. Yeah. With that, we'll open it up to questions. Yeah, just stay away.
You didn't mention any location capability of the Google Analytics. So like where the users are coming from. Maybe we can just show them up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
That's going to be in the audience. It's going to be in the audience overview. There's the whole geo component. The overview itself is where I'd start.
Yeah, so you get a nice map.
So you have languages, and then under demographics, you can select country, city, and all that. Yeah. So United States, Canada, UK. Yeah, that's in the geo section. Locations. So simple choropleth map, and then the real time, that was where the cities were popping up to show that where exactly people were coming from. Yeah.
This is kind of a meta question, but can I get this data and then make an Esri map with it?
Google Analytics has an awesome API. The way that I would do that is I would build a Coop provider, plug my talk tomorrow for connecting third-party data into ArcGIS to talk to the Google Analytics API, translate that into the geoservices specification, and then you can get it on the map. But yeah, might need to geocode. I don't think they'll give you the lat and long in those cities.
Yes, that's a lot to put into a half hour, and we're clearly only skimming the surface. There's a ton that you can do with Google Analytics. So follow up with either Daniel or I after if you have more questions.
And
we'll be around.
Or just watch the traffic.
Yeah, just watch it roll in.
It's a little low. It's after hours on the East Coast. There's a big time dip on weekends and after work hours. All right.
Cool.
Thank you all
Thanks.
very much.